Hey guys, with all the hype around Avengers Doomsday thanks to the latest trailer coming out, I thought I'd walk you through the Doctor Doom drawing I've done recently. It was quite an interesting combination of traditional media and digital media, and it is by far the longest a drawing has taken me to do. So I hope you guys enjoy it. For this drawing I'm going to be using a combination of my superior color pencils and this 100% cotton color pencil paper. Now at the time of recording, the Doctor Doom suit that Robert Downey Jr. is going to be wearing in the MCU has yet to be revealed, so I've had to look elsewhere for reference. I decided to take reference from the Hot Toys figure. This is very much a comic book inspired figure, but Hot Toys has done an excellent job of translating the comic book design into real life. Normally in most drawings, I'd start off with the face, but because metal is notoriously difficult to get right, I decided to dip my toes in the water by starting with his hand. That way, if I haven't got it quite right off the bat, the focal point of the entire drawing isn't ruined and I won't have to start again. As suspected, I was not happy with how the metallics were coming out, so I decided to move on to something a bit more comfortable and focus on the fabric of his hood. This would be a good time to mention that I've decided to go for a pose of him casting magic using a book. Not quite the Darkhold, but Darkhold-esque. I've decided to make the color of his magic red to contrast nicely against the green of his cape. With the Hot Toys figure, there's a specific accessory of his hand forcing its way through the magic, and I thought this was a really nice contrast to someone like Doctor Strange, where it's quite elegant. This made it seem more aggressive almost for a character like Doctor Doom. As you can see, I then decided to bite the bullet and go straight for the helmet, and boy am I glad that I did. I'm far happier with how the metallics on this helmet are coming out than the initial test I did with his hand. I think this comes down to the undertones I chose. With his hand I went for more simple yellow undertones, but on the helmet here I went for a more goldy, bronzy, almost brown undertone, which I then layered on top of using the silvers and greys, and then the reds for the highlights coming from the magic spell in his right hand there. I then moved on to his eyes. It's important to note that this is the only flesh that's poking through in this drawing, and since his eyes are exposed, unlike Iron Man, it is absolutely crucial that I get this right to portray emotion. As mentioned earlier, I've gone for a pose where his right hand is poking and pushing its way through the magic. This creates quite an interesting dilemma with the blending. Where does his metallic fingers start and stop? Where exactly is it breaching through the magic spell? Now that I've built up a bit of confidence, I'm going to start my way moving down his arm, starting at the shoulder pad. It's important to remember that metal is reflective, and this should be portrayed in the drawing too. Because of this, I'll be adding in some light blue/teal highlights to reflect the green of his coat, and some red highlights to reflect the spell. As mentioned earlier, I've gone for gold bronzy undertones. I found when drawing metal characters, the undertones make or break the drawing. This is often what makes a drawing look more metallic than just grey. This is where I'm taking some creative liberties compared to my reference. The Hot Toys is just a plain silver, and there's no real hint of this bronzy undertone that I'm adding. But overall, I feel this adds to the drawing. Briefly touching on the paper itself, it's a 100% cotton paper, which makes it quite unique actually. Unlike most papers, it's got a slightly rough texture to it, but nowhere near as rough as a multimedia pad. When multimedia paper chews through your pencils, this is actually quite soft on there, while still picking up a lot of pigment from the pencils. The other thing I've noticed is it doesn't have any of that like white speckling that color pencils often have, where the paper pokes through the pigment. Because the paper is quite soft, it takes quite a lot of layers before the drawing is burnished, and you can't lay any more pigment on top of it, which is great because that helps with overall coverage of the drawing. As you'll see later on, I had to go over it quite a few times to achieve the saturation I wanted to. Of course, this added to how long the drawing took me to do, but overall I think it was worth it. I have a tendency to press quite hard when I draw, especially while sketching. This often leaves deep grooves in the paper that color pencil tends to struggle to cover, often resulting in these light scratches showing up through the pigment of my drawings. Paper has a tendency to bounce back, for lack of a better term, so I don't really have that deep groove issue with this paper specifically. For all the benefits that this paper has, including the way it holds pigment, this can actually be detrimental in certain instances. Naturally, as you move around a drawing, you tend to smudge it a little bit, and I found it was incredibly difficult to actually get rid of those smudges using a traditional eraser. Certainly much harder than using something like blending card, for example.
Now that is on me. If I planned out the drawing better, I could have worked my way across the drawing in such a way that my hand wouldn't have gone over any pigmented areas, causing any smudging. But in all honesty, that's not really how I work. I don't really plan out how I'm drawing. I just kind of move sort of like a puzzle piece around the drawing, starting with what I like and moving from there. And I like to work on pieces that are connected. Since I'm working on the drawing over several days, even weeks to months at times, this helps with the feeling of cohesion and getting the colors right and the colors to match. Because of the aforementioned issue erasing the smudge marks from the white background that's there, I decided to actually do the background digitally. This also allowed for touching up the highlights and adding in effects digitally as well. Overall, I'm extremely happy with how this piece came out, and very satisfied to say the least. This is by far the longest I've taken to do a drawing, partly due to the fact that color pencils as a medium just take forever, and partly because dealing with a now 1-year-old is a handful in its own right. Between that and a full-time job, I only really got to draw during very spare moments. But this allowed me to express patience that I normally don't have with my drawings. Normally my drawings get to a point where I just want them done, and then I end up rushing them, and those final touches don't come together nearly as nicely as they can.
Hope you guys enjoyed that. Like I said, that's probably the longest drawing's ever taken me to do. I think all in all it was about 300 hours of footage I had to comb through. Months and months in the process of doing it. So if you guys were to like and subscribe, it'd be greatly appreciated. And I'll see you guys on the next one.